Why does going to the pharmacy suck now? Well, in this video, I am going to react to a video from a more perfect union that tries to answer this question. I'm sure it's going to reveal a lot of things we already know about pharmacy, but to a wider audience. And I wanted to share my reaction as a pharmacist, but also as a career coach, someone who helps pharmacists leave these kinds of toxic work environments where they're kind of treated more like McDonald's employees versus an actual clinician. So let's get to it.
So I was 7 months pregnant with my daughter, Ella. I've been having some blood pressure issues, and my managing staff was aware of this. I told them, listen, my blood pressure is kind of acting crazy. I'm not feeling that great.
Amanda Poole is a pharmacist in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. She worked for years at CVS until incidents like this one.
7.5 months pregnant. Never once was it offered to have somebody come in and help me or work with me. And God forbid you had a stool. So my blood pressure bottomed out, and I felt I was on the ground. I passed out, and the only reason that anyone knew that is a customer came in to pick up a prescription, and no one came to wait on her in a timely manner. No one reached out. No one from higher up in the company apologized even. Hey, I'm so sorry this happened. Are you okay? None of that. They were really more concerned about who's going to fill this hole because she can't work today.
They'll try to tell you at CVS and Walgreens that there's just a shortage of pharmacists. There's a shortage of technicians.
Oh, shame.
And that's not really the case.
When you treat your employees a certain way for so long, they stop wanting to work for you. And that's
so sadly, this is all too common. I know firsthand pharmacists who have had to wear Depends diapers because they weren't allowed to have breaks, or they had incontinence issues, or they just couldn't hold themselves and they were unallowed to take a break. I know pharmacists who were so overworked, they would fall asleep on the stairs up to their bedroom because they didn't have enough energy to get into bed. I know pharmacists who cry themselves after their shifts and on their way to work. This is unfortunately the sad situation for the majority of community pharmacy. And by majority, I mean 50 to 70% of pharmacists in that setting are burnt out, overworked, overstressed, according to literature as well as survey data.
Away for so long, they stop wanting to work for you. And that's essentially what's happened.
Between the long lines snaking around the vitamin aisle and the soaring price of drugs, picking up a prescription has become a sickening experience for many Americans. And believe it or not, it's even worse for pharmacists themselves. After a decade of turbulence, burnout has become such an epidemic among pharmacy workers that they're starting to unionize. When the Pharmacist Guild's website went live on November 8th, it crashed almost immediately under the weight of 30,000 union-seeking workers. The uprising began a month earlier in Kansas City, where retail pharmacy workers at stores like CVS and Walgreens walked off the job in protest.
It's not just specific to one area. This is a problem that's teetering on the verge of a public health crisis. And it emboldened a lot of technicians and pharmacists to follow suit.
Shane Jereminski is a pharmacist in Palm Springs, California. His Facebook page, The Accidental Pharmacist, helped organize the Kansas City walkout. Not long after, on October 30th, pharmacists walked out of stores nationwide in a protest that was dubbed Pharmageddon.
Walgreens and CVS and all the chains wanted to downplay it, saying that there was minimal disruption to their business operations. But we had hundreds of pharmacists and technicians across the country participate in it.
It wasn't all that long ago that being a pharmacist was a prestigious, desirable job. And the people who do the work still love its key functions.
I love it.
So everything they've said so far, I believe, is true, if not a little bit over-exaggerated for dramatic effect. Pharmageddon did happen, and walkouts are continuing to happen. And I think that this is the pendulum swinging back in the power, I hope, for the employee. Now, for those of you who may not know what's happened over the last 50 years in terms of just the general labor market, in the 80s, under Ronald Reagan, we send a lot of our work overseas. This allowed companies to maintain a very high profit margin for cheap labor, slave labor wages, really, in order to not just keep products cheap, but also to keep margins high. This dismantled the union's power. Oddly enough, the union was on Ronald Reagan's side when he later essentially sold them out. Sadly, this history has led us to where we are today, where unions don't really have so much power. And at this point in time in history, they haven't really decided on which side of the aisle they're going to align with. The fact that a profession that on average makes around $137,000 annually is unionizing tells you how poorly people are being treated. And the Pharmacy Guild, run by Shane and Bledtano and a few others as well, is something that is going to be a natural consequence for a profession that is pushed to the brink. And it's not just the fact that it's affecting us mentally. I mean, something that they've already highlighted here is that pharmacists know for a fact that we are putting patients at risk because we are so focused on achieving a company metric over actually providing patient care.
People who do the work still love its key functions.
I love it. I mean, I love that patient interaction. I like that they know me on a first name basis and I know them on a first name basis. And you laugh with them and cry with them. And sometimes you grieve with them as well when there's a loss in the family.
But like so many healthcare workers, pharmacists have been caught up in vast changes to the industry that have made life hell for workers and patients alike.
Pharmacists are having to do things that they didn't used to do 10 or 20 years ago. They're incredibly short-staffed and overworked and having to deal with patients that are often very disgruntled because they find out how much they have to pay out of their own pockets, even with insurance.
This is Wendell Potter, a former health insurance company executive who now works to expose the abuses of the corporations that have seized control of the American healthcare system. Pharmacists cite several interlocking problems, including working conditions, short staffing, and treatment of patients. All of it stems from one of Potter's focuses: corporate consolidation and vertical integration.
Insurance companies have increasingly gotten into healthcare delivery. They've been buying physician practices and clinics. One of their biggest cash cows these days is their pharmacy benefit management entity.
Yep.
Pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, work for insurance companies. They negotiate with drug makers over how much the insurance company will pay for different medications. And then they negotiate with pharmacies over how much they'll get paid for filling a prescription. It may sound like the free market at work, but after a decade of corporate consolidation and vertical integration, the market has been rigged to our detriment.
10 years ago, pharmacy benefit managers were much, much smaller, and they were not owned by big insurance companies. They were independent, but insurance companies saw an opportunity to make a lot of money in the pharmacy supply chain.
CVS Health, the biggest retail pharmacy chain in the country, also owns Aetna, a massive insurance company, and Caremark, the nation's largest pharmacy benefit manager.
In the first 3 quarters of 2023, CVS Health made $6 billion in profit thanks to this vertical integration.
Another thing that needs to be stated here is that essentially 3 major PBMs control 80% of the PBM market. Yeah, it's another, I was going to say tragic, but it's another story of major corporations controlling the market to achieve huge profits for stakeholders, shareholders, and executives. At the end of the day, this is Robin Hood. This is a story of the rich and powerful controlling the markets, and ultimately, it's the everyday person that suffers for it. That's why I think this is starting to get attention now in the market to say, like, this isn't right. This isn't what it should be.
Caremark, the PBM, can cut CVS retail pharmacies a better deal on a drug than it would give CVS's competitors, or any smaller independent pharmacy for that matter. The company's sheer size and its domination of the market gives it a lot of negotiating power.
These are kind of like take it or leave it contracts, and PBMs, Express Scripts, CVS Caremark, and Optum Rx control like 80% the pharmacy benefits manager market. So if you're an independent pharmacy
Good to know that
and
my
you're presented
percentages are
with this
on.
contract, it's kind of take it or leave it.
The success of independent pharmacies is often determined not by customer service or expertise, but whether it can eke out a profit while dealing with these behemoth corporations. And because those corporations also now consider them competitors, it can get pretty ruthless.
So Ozempic acquisition cost might be $800 or $900, but when is all said and done, the patient's copay plus what's reimbursed by a company like Express Scripts, you might lose $50 on that medication. I mean, that's an unsustainable business model. And that's why independent pharmacies are going out of business.
And a lot of them are closing, leaving a lot of people in communities with no option except one of the chain stores.
So it's a good summation of the situation. PBMs have gutted independent pharmacies. The number of pharmacy independents has dropped significantly over the last 2 decades. But there is innovation happening. They're not competing. In fact, more and more independents are frankly not even selling prescription drugs. It's alternative therapies. It's med spas, because that's where cash money is. But to be a traditional pharmacy that opens up and competes with CVS, Walgreens, it's not a friendly market. It's not a place that I would want to play, or most pharmacists now want to play, because they control the terms that for their reimbursements.
One of the chain stores.
Pharmacists often prefer independent stores because they allow for more personal interactions with customers, as well as a safer work environment. Between 1980 and 2022, the United States lost half of its independent pharmacies. 3,500 closed between 2010 and 2016 alone. Chain pharmacies are closing at accelerated rates too. Rite Aid filed for bankruptcy in late 2023 and is expected to close 400 to 500 stores across the country. In 2022, CVS said it would close 900 stores. With less competition, it can focus on its mail-order pharmacy and pad margins even higher. As stores disappear and their customers flock to the remaining chain pharmacies, the stress on workers spikes exponentially.
If no one shows up or they have call-outs, they'll run it with one pharmacist there. It was about 6 years ago, 7 years ago now. That's when all retail pharmacies started to understand how profitable vaccinations were.
Right when the COVID vaccines were rolling out, you'd have 4 patients every 15 minutes for shots. Again, I was fine with it at first because I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm going to vaccinate, just still that same mentality. I'm going to take care of everybody. So I'm going to vaccinate as many people as I can. You would come back and you would be behind. And every prescription has a timestamp on it, and you are judged by that time. So if you don't have your prescriptions in and out in a timely manner and you fell behind, it would turn red, and then that would show up on a report for your district leader or your manager for the next week.
The long wait times are inconvenient for customers, but inconvenience isn't the worst part. The business model is actually leading to life-threatening errors. In 2021, a survey found that 91% of pharmacists didn't think their workplaces had enough staff to safely dispense medication.
You get only a few seconds to evaluate every single prescription. And it sounds like, I'm speaking in hyperbole here about killing someone, but it's very easy to make a mistake that can be potentially fatal.
What happens when you're so busy and your technician is overworked, or you don't have a technician there, and you've typed in the prescription, you've checked the prescription, and you've looked at it, and you think it said lisinopril, which is a blood pressure medicine, and it said levothyroxine, which is a thyroid medicine.
The store might get issued a fine of $5,000, $10,000, even $25,000 for a serious medication error. The pharmacist that committed that error and the pharmacy manager who's ultimately responsible can be put on probation, which really hinders their ability to practice. So you tell me who has more at risk there. That's a line item on a corporate tax return for Walgreens or CVS, but it has severely changed the course of the trajectory of your career as a pharmacist.
One study found that 5 million pharmacy mistakes are made per year in California alone, most of them at CVS and Walgreens. Pharmacists need more help, but they say the appeals fall on deaf ears, with little compensation for new technicians. A key driver of the walkouts was a crowdfunding campaign to pay those pharmacy techs a living wage for their day on strike.
we paid out wage assistance to 175 technicians across the country. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics has the average retail technician making $18.25 an hour, and that's simply not reflective of the amount of work that they do.
IAM Health, a national union of healthcare workers, is backing the Pharmacists Guild, which is planning a national rollout this year.
Pharmageddon allowed us to get that national media coverage, to have an existing established union back us in a way that we could roll out a national campaign. I made a bold prediction on a couple different places. I told the Financial Times that I foresee 5 years from now, the majority of pharmacists and technicians from Walgreens and CVS being unionized. And I stand by that, because as soon as the first stores start voting and they see that what we're doing is working, there's going to be such a huge buzz that we're going to have an avalanche of people that are interested.
They definitely need that kind of vision. I think that this was a good summation of why pharmacy does suck now. It's the story of overworked pharmacists putting in hours and motivated by wanting to help people and taking advantage of that to force them to work on things that ultimately don't help patients, but just create a higher margin and bottom line. It comes back to an age-old question that I think the American society is not ready to answer. Are we going to make healthcare free? Should healthcare be a fundamental right for every human being, no matter what the cost? We have the science, we have the evidence, we know what it takes to prevent diseases. Should that be free? Should that be given? And I remember bringing this up to a British friend of mine, and he was so appalled by the fact that I even have to ask that question. What do you mean? I can't do a British accent. What do you mean, Alex? We have a problem in our society, and it's really at our core, and it's a part of our foundation as a nation. The drive to prove value and worth because, well, we're the land of opportunity. You know, my coach likes to tell me, you can't have a breakthrough until you have a breakdown. And I think things have broken down so much that pharmacists are willing to put their livelihoods at risk in order to stand up for what's right. And until more people are willing to do that, I don't think things are going to change. And frankly, if I had to predict what's going to happen next, I think the unions are going to gain more traction. I think that the pendulum will swing back in the power of the employee in the next 10 to 15 years. But I also believe that a great reckoning is going to happen in healthcare. The model isn't sustainable. And it's not just pharmacy. I mean, it's the whole thing. And now what we're seeing with the current administration's rollback of Medicare and Medicaid and the lack of funding, something is going to break. And unfortunately, at the end of the day, it won't be the people at the top that will suffer. It'll be those people that desperately need healthcare. It'll be the people who we serve that will feel the pain of this. And until things get bad, it is unlikely that things will change significantly. Going to the pharmacy does suck now. And trends are leaning more and more towards convenience than they are traditional pharmacy. Whether you are wanting to change that model or whether you are wanting to get out of it, we're here to help. I would highly encourage you to join our private community to share what you're going through and where you're wanting to get into next. Because just because this part of pharmacy isn't working for you, it doesn't mean that there isn't something else. Whether it's clinical, community, hospital, or something totally non-traditional, we have workshops and free programs and classes for you to take that are CE certified that can help you figure out what's next for your career. We are heading in a different direction. Who knows what the future holds? But what I do know is that there is potential to change things. And I'm looking forward to being a part of that solution. Thanks for watching this video. And until I see you in the next one, stay curious and take care.